A lot of politicians talk about agriculture. She is agriculture. A lot of politicians talk about rural businesses and rural job creation. She is rural business. A lot of politicians talk about the importance of rural communities. Well, she's helped to build and maintain rural communities. Ladies and gentlemen, our keynote speaker for lunch, Congresswoman Kristi Noem.
Thank you. Go ahead and have a seat. Boy, it's good to see all of you. You look good. It's good to be back. I just got home today about an hour and a half ago, so it's always, there's a little bit of sigh of relief that you have when you set your feet back in South Dakota. So I appreciate all of you coming here. And the story that Dusty was just telling reminded me a little bit of, this last week I was talking to a group of kids from Rapid City. And they were there, it was the Rapid City Children's Choir. And one of the little guys that was in the group, I think they were all about 12 or 13 years old, but one of the guys' names was Omar. And Senator Thune and I were talking to him and the entire group, and he raised his hand and he said, you know, when I grow up, I want to do what you guys do. How can I do that? What do I have to do so that I can do what you guys do when I grow up? And I said, get a job. You know, that is the best thing that you could possibly do, is go get a job. And that'll give you the experience that you need. I'm constantly surprised by the amount of people that are in Washington, D.C. that are making decisions for our country that haven't owned their own business, that haven't worked away from government. And I think that truly is the key to the solutions that we need to this regulatory environment that we have, or to a lot of the situations that we're facing that's causing our industries to struggle, is that we need people who understand business and who have actually gone out there and done it, understand what it means to keep a farm and a ranch operating and to keep a business going in tough economic times. That experience just can't be replaced by a lot of other things. So I appreciate Dusty having me here today and thank him for his leadership and organizing. And I understand that this is going to run on time, that he has been on the drill, on top of it, and I'm not going to mess that up for him. So I appreciate him having me, and I want to thank the governor for his leadership in our number one industry in this state. Agriculture has been vital to South Dakota for as long as I can remember, since the very beginnings of the state, and to my family especially too. Our entire life has been agriculture and the farm and the ranch, and it just means the world to me. So to have people come together in a summit to talk about the issues that we're facing and possible solutions is great. That's exactly what we need in this country. And our thoughts and prayers are constantly with everyone in this state who's facing the flooding right now too. We have so many issues going on, but that has just been a crisis situation where we've seen the perfect example of people coming together in South Dakota. Work ethic and tenacity is on dealing with these flooding issues. And lots of producers are struggling too. There's millions of acres across this country that are being affected by flooding in tens of thousands of acres in South Dakota. We could have potentially 1 million acres impacted at the end of this year just in South Dakota by excess water. So we need to keep our eye on the ball there and make sure that we've got the resources working towards a resolution and dealing with that situation. I'll just give you a little bit of an update on what's going on in Washington, D.C. and talk to you a little bit about the environment as well that we're facing as agriculture out in Washington. Obviously, what's driving a lot of the discussion is the debt in this country. And we talk a lot about the fact that out of every dollar that this government spends, that 42 cents of it is borrowed. Just in the 1970s, only 5% of our country's debt was owned by foreign companies, and now today 47% of it is owned by foreign companies. I think everybody in this room can agree that when you have debt, that you're a bit enslaved to that person, that is one of the drivers and what drives your decision making. And when you have countries like China making those decisions or influencing our policies, it certainly is of grave concern. So there is a big drive to deal with our debt, to have a plan on our way out of this so we don't continue to accumulate that. And we were talking a little bit about the roundtable that happened yesterday here, and it sounds like there was amazing progress as far as unifying the voice for agriculture. I commend everyone who sat at that table as representing a group for agriculture, because that is what I hear every day in Washington, D.C., is people do not understand agriculture. They don't understand the necessity of it. And for me, the argument that I make with most of the people is that, first of all, I feel as though I'm educating them on the value of agriculture. There are so many new members this year on just the House side. There are 96 new members, which is the largest class of new members since the 1950s. So it's historically large, and a lot of them don't come from agricultural regions. They don't have that kind of background. We do have some good farmers and ranchers that were elected. I believe there were 7 or 8 on the House side that were elected, but we're obviously in the minority. And so our job is to be even more proactive and not just carry the message of policy, but to educate them on the fact that we need to grow the food in this country for national security reasons. You've all probably heard the argument before about our farm bill being food policy and being a food bill. And I think that it's key that we need to talk about it that way so that we have people that are so out of touch with agriculture that they understand that it is very important that we are able to feed ourselves in this country, that we recognize the fact that that's a national security issue for us just as much as producing our own energy, and utilizing our own energy is a national security issue. So that is a bit of the environment that we have. We have a lot of new members. 87 of those new members are Republicans, which is a huge number of the new members that are out there, and I was elected by them to be their liaison to the leadership team. And people ask me all the time what that means, and essentially what that means is on a weekly basis, and lately it's been on a daily basis, is I sit at a table with Speaker Boehner and Leader Cantor and have conversations about policy and about our way out and about what the agenda on the House floor will be. And I'll tell you, we have a lot of good discussion and we have a lot of good arguments too. A lot of times I find myself needing to educate our leadership just on those priorities and those same issues of national security. As we go forward and we talk about ag policy, we need to make sure that we're protecting it for the security of our nation, and our leadership needs to know that as well. We have an amazing opportunity here to chart a really clear course on ag policy, but I will tell you that this atmosphere right now out in Washington, D.C. is driven by needing to come to some sort of deficit resolution and debt resolution. And that drives a lot of the policy decisions that are right now. My goal is that when we're making those decisions, that we make them based on good policy for the future and for our country's interest, not on just trying to eliminate programs that we feel have been there for a long period of time. That we need to go in there and make wise decisions and use a scalpel to make those decisions rather than coming in with a hatchet and hurting our economy and our jobs in times when we are susceptible to that. So I'll just cover a couple of things. I'm sure most of you know that recently I was appointed to be on the Agriculture Committee, which did not happen right away. I was on the Natural Resources Committee and on the Education and Workforce Committee, and just recently I was placed on the Ag Committee as well. It's a great place for me to be, to represent the interests that we have with my experience as a farmer and a rancher, and with serving on the Farm Service Agency in the past, and with the Soybean Association as well. I just think it's a great place to have some real input into what really happens out here on the ground when you pass ag policy. There are 3 subcommittees that I'll be serving on. The first one is going to be the Conservation, Energy, and Forestry subcommittee, and then I'll also serve on the Livestock, Dairy, and the Poultry subcommittee. The last one is the Department of Operations, Oversight, and Credit. So virtually all of those touch all different kinds of areas of South Dakota and how this industry is impacted. It's going to be very key to have a voice on those subcommittees. A lot of these bills come through those committees and are marked up before they hit the full committee. And as these discussions go forward on the Farm Bill, that we have a lot of our decisions are made in that Ag Committee. That is the one thing I've consistently said over and over to Speaker Boehner and to Leader Cantor, is that if there are cuts to be made, that Ag should not take more than their fair share. The Ag has consistently stepped up. We took cuts in the 2008 Farm Bill. We took cuts to crop insurance under the last SRA, and we certainly should not be taking more than our fair share under this next negotiation round as well. Those 3 subcommittees are going to see a lot of activity. We've got a tough recession going on right now, an economy that's struggling. Producers at times are finding a tough time getting credit that they need. Obviously, we have a lot of uncertainty out there, and a lot of times the government has stepped in and picked winners and losers. And so we're going to have people making those decisions that are going to be very key. Through my position with the leadership team and on these committee assignments, I'm excited to represent a lot of the values that South Dakota holds dear. And agriculture not only provides us with the food security, but also with job security to a lot of people across this country. Probably the number one issue that I hear about every day from farmers across South Dakota and from lenders and from people involved in the industry is this prevented planting issue. We have acres that have been impacted for many years in a row now that haven't been able to be planted, and currently right now they need to be planted 1 out of every 3 years. We've carried that up the chain and had that conversation many times, and I do expect an announcement to be made soon that there will be some relief in that area. We're hoping that we can at least get that extended into 1 out of every 4 years, recognizing what's happening across the state and the wet conditions that are going on. We truly do need some relief in this area, and if we could at least get that extended out to planted 1 out of every 4 years, I think that would help us in the near term, and then find a real resolution as we go through this next farm bill. So I expect to see an announcement coming out on that real soon that's going to bring some relief to South Dakota farmers. We have had historic flooding in 2009, 2010, and now 2011. And so I know that USDA's Risk Management Agency is looking to modify that to make it work for producers all across this country that are being impacted. I'm also going to be looking for clarification on a recent RMAM announcement that they're regarding eligibility and eligibility for flooded cropland from weather events. I know that there has been some discussion on that to see these flooded events if they've happened outside the insurance period, and we're going to be looking for some clarification on that too, to see if we can get some coverage and some relief for some of our producers as well. I know that the driver between all of these changes in the past and the more oversight has been to get rid of waste, fraud, and abuse, and that certainly has the potential there, but I will tell you that these programs serve a big purpose for farmers. And as I talk to farmers across the state and my own family members, we recognize the importance of having that safety net. At the end of the day, it's a very risky business, and we need to have the safety net in place to be able to ensure that crop so that we can continue year after year after year. Right now, as we move into Farm Bill discussions, I will tell you we have 37 different programs in the Farm Bill that are starting with a baseline of 0. That means that they have no funding attached to them right now in the budget process. It's going to be a very tough Farm Bill discussion. It's going to be one like we probably haven't seen in the past because of that challenge. There is some discussion that could be coming forward that there will be potentially up to $30 billion worth of cuts just under Title I, which is the farm program portion of that Farm Bill discussion. And I know that when we have those conversations, and we've seen that coming, and as I've talked with the committee and the committee staff, that our number one goal is that the Agriculture Committee makes those decisions, that those decisions aren't made in appropriations, that they're not made with people who don't understand the industry and don't know where those need to come from. A lot of the conversation that comes out of South Dakota is a willingness to look at reducing direct payments versus the safety net, versus the crop insurance programs. And I understand that, and I agree that that is traditionally where agriculture takes a lot of its criticism, is through those direct payments. The hurdles that we have there is that they are in the green box for the WTO, and then also the fact that when you look at the southern states and the perspective and the value that they have to them. For us in South Dakota, or across the country, I guess the country average is that we receive about $15 per acre on direct payments on corn. But when you look at a commodity like rice, they receive about $100 per acre. And that can add up to about 70% of their income on that crop comes from direct payments. So we're going to have some tough negotiation going forward, knowing that it is extremely valuable to people growing those other commodities across the state or across the country, and that we're going to have to make sure that when we go forward, I would like to see us try to utilize and give producers across this country the tool that is the most valuable to them according to their region and according to their commodity. I think we need to have a flexible and a mobile farm program as we go forward, and that's the message that I've been carrying forward as we talk to Chairman Lucas and the committee staff as we've been working on hammering out some of the details on the Farm Bill. The Farm Bill discussion is expected to start over in the Senate, and that is probably was not expected to come over to the House side for real discussion until next year. But in light of what has been going on in the Appropriations Committee and some of the cuts that have been discussed, I believe that we'll start on that a little bit sooner than that. Probably by the end of this year is when we'll start looking at some of the Farm Bill components and start having a lot of those discussions. Essentially, the mainstream press has been focusing on the Farm Bill as a way to reduce the deficit. And as you see the Ag Appropriations Bill that came out just about a week and a half ago, agriculture took a large hit through that bill that came off the House floor. I couldn't support it for the reasons that I talked about earlier. The fact that they were asking agriculture to take a much bigger cut than what they were asking any of these other appropriation bills to take. Agriculture essentially was looking at a 13% cut, when the rest of those appropriations bills that will be coming will be taking about a 6 to 7% cut. And so we certainly, as we go forward, need to be telling our story and to be unified in that voice and talking about the importance of having a solid food program so we can feed our country. The unfortunate reality is a lot of people just don't recognize the importance. I was very surprised by that when I first arrived in DC, that perhaps we haven't effectively been telling our story enough so that people recognize the importance of our industry, and that we absolutely need to make sure that we do that we educate them while we are working towards our policy goals, so that we don't have to backtrack and re-educate them every single time that we need another policy initiative forwarded. While agriculture, along with every other industry, has to take some, or may potentially take some reductions to get our spending under control, we should not be taking it disproportionately. Security on ag is extremely important, and when we talk about different programs that are coming forward under the energy title portion of the Farm Bill as well, we basically have virtually every program under the energy title is starting with a zero baseline as well. CRP and our conservation programs continue to face some challenges. I know under the last Farm Bill there was a reduction in CRP acreages, and I'm looking forward to really making the point that CRP plays such a key role in making sure that we're utilizing our marginal cropland effectively so that we can use it for conservation purposes, but then we're also saving those high dollar input costs and putting them into our most productive farmland. So that's a very important program for South Dakota, with the input and the impact that our pheasant industry and our hunting industry has as well, that we need to continue to focus on that being a part of our Farm Bill program. We've faced some challenges as well with ethanol. I'm sure most of you have followed that discussion as well. There have been some very tough votes lately. The Senate has taken a couple of tough votes, and the House has taken a couple of tough votes. We had on the Ag Appropriations Bill 2 different amendments that were offered. One was offered to completely eliminate the VTEC tax credit, and that was overwhelmingly considered and passed. And then also Representative Flake forwarded another one that would take away all funding for flex pumps across the country, which was very concerning. It's a very clear indication that on ethanol that we have got a lot of work to do. My argument and my discussion with the leadership team and with other members has been that this is the perfect American energy plan that we've all been looking for. When we come down to creating an energy plan for this country, we need to have an all-of-the-above approach. But the number one priority needs to be a domestic supply, that we utilize our own supply here in this country and not rely on other countries. So whether that comes to using more oil, more coal, more ethanol, we focus on the fact that it's renewable, that we can produce it here, that it brings down the cost of gasoline. And some reports have reported that ethanol has brought down the cost to 89 cents per gallon. That is a great story to be telling people right now when they're facing these high gas prices. The Senate as well has had some tough votes, and so Senator Thune and I have both put in bills that would be compromises that have the support of the ethanol industry that we're working to go forward with. I will tell you the key component is that people are looking for deficit reduction, and they see that these dollars that go to VTEC could be utilized to go towards that. And what we're trying to do is to make sure that we meet the needs that are there to get the votes, but also make sure that we leave ethanol with the infrastructure that it needs to compete. We need to have those pumps in place so that consumers have the option to utilize the product if they would like to. And they will like to, because it is an excellent fuel that will lower their costs, and we just need to make sure that we have those pumps in place to do that. So my compromise bill would give us $1.3 billion towards deficit reduction. It would end VTEC on July 1st, but it would also put money, $600 million, into flex pumps, getting that infrastructure out there through tax credits, and then also some cellulosic ethanol investment and small producer investment. And I think we're getting some traction with that. We're looking towards the Senate, what Senator Thune is working on as well, and because we're very concerned that there could be a drive with some more of these ethanol votes to come forward, and that we would lose everything. And we can't afford to lose everything for ethanol. The biggest key right now is it is a very strong industry. It has proven itself over and over again, but we have to overcome that infrastructure hurdle and make sure that we can do that. As you know, the recent votes have indicated a lack of support, and that's up to us and to our job to make sure that we're working that very hard to make sure that we've got that in place and continue to keep it there. You know, as we all have followed the news, I'm sure the last 24 hours, you've seen that there's been an agreement on the free trade agreements with the administration and with the Senate and the House, and I believe that those will be coming together as a package and will be moving through. I think that's good news. There is some TAA component to that as it comes forward, and so we are looking to see there is some unhappiness on different committees that will be a component that is agreed upon, but I will tell you that the farm industry has stepped up and said this is something that we definitely need, that every day we're losing market access, and every day we're losing dollars, and up to $3 billion, that we do not have the ability to trade with these companies, countries. So I'm looking forward to the fact that we'll finally have those in place for South Korea, for Colombia, for Panama, and that we'll have that market access that we need to give us stability to our markets and to our commodity prices. We have a bright future in front of us as agriculture. You have worked hard, you have lifted up the Midwest in this country and provided us with the safest food supply in the world. The United States and our people benefit from that, and sometimes when you have something that is the best in the world, you take it for granted, and you don't truly appreciate it as much as you should. And that's where we step in, and we certainly need to be telling that story, much like the discussion was yesterday, about the fact that we have the safest food supply, we can feed our own people, and we need to continue to do that, and all of our policy should endorse that and should build that up to make sure that that continues to be a priority. So as we go through the Farm Bill discussion, as we go through this continued ethanol fight, and as we go forward to make sure that we have market access, we'll continue to deliver that message, but we really truly need, with this environment that we're facing and recognizing the fact that we have the most predictable financial crisis we've ever faced in this country coming. I have spent the last 2 days talking with economists. I've spent the last 2 days talking with the markets and with those invested in the markets and with those strategic analysts who are looking at the situation that we're facing, recognizing that we are somewhere where we've never been before in this country. We are 2 to 3 years away from being a Greece, or from being in the same situation that Europe is in, if we do not change the way that we fundamentally spend our money and prioritize our spending in this country. So facing that environment and with all of the information that is coming, we need to make sure that where we are putting our dollars is effective, that it is for the best interest of our people and for our country, and that it is going to make sure that we have national security. We can provide ourselves with our own energy that our economy needs to survive and to thrive, and that we can feed our people right here at home, and we don't need to rely on other countries to do that for us. You are such a key part of that, and as we look at all the volatility that's happening across our country and across the world, everyone recognizes right now that the one stable point is agriculture and the stability that you bring and the input that you bring. And that coming as a unified voice on policy is going to be very key in making sure that as we go forward, a lot of these talks on deficit reduction and where our spending should go, that we're going to not be fighting with ourselves, but we're going to be driving home our points and educating this country on the value that agriculture is. So thank you so much for having me. I think we have a few minutes, do we, Dusty, to take some questions? I certainly would be more than willing to take any questions if you've got some on your mind. If I haven't fully answered some of the questions that you wanted to hear about today, that would be wonderful. So, does anybody have any questions for me? Yes?
What about the estate tax?
Yeah. Well, you know, that of course, you know my personal story with the state taxes probably pretty well. That is one of the things that has gotten me involved in government in politics from the very beginning. And so we're working towards that. We've had different measures that have come forward that have not been successful so far. I don't believe it's going to be part of the negotiation package that will come with this debt ceiling negotiations that are happening with the President and with the leadership of the House and the Senate. We do have some relief for a period of time here based on the deal that was made at the end of the year, but we don't have a long-term solution, and that's the issue. So the one thing that I would like to, just as a reminder to everyone, when we look at our federal budget, over 60% of our spending is on autopilot, which essentially means it doesn't come back to Congress for approval every year. It's a formula-funded program that continues. The formula gets plugged in, the numbers get plugged in, it's automatically done. So that is one of the drivers of our spending in this country. And as we come into these debt ceiling negotiations, we're trying to get our deficit under control, but also recognizing that in order to get something done, you have to have consensus. We can't change policy, and we can't truly address our deficit unless we get the House and the Senate and the President to agree. We can control the budget, but our budget only controls defense spending and discretionary spending, essentially. I mean, that's a brief summary. But the majority of it is on autopilot and doesn't come through the budget process and come back to Congress every year. So a lot of our spending we have to address if we truly want to rein it in and make it much more specific, has to be done through policy. And all policy has to be done with agreement from those three entities. And that's where we're running into problems right now. So the estate tax is one of those issues. If we could get some consensus with the President and with the Senate and with the House, we could truly move that. And right now we don't have agreement. Yes?
Any hope for reinstatement of horse processing federal inspection programs to turn an economic liability into economic asset?
Yeah, Frankie, you, and I think you kind of grabbed onto that same GAO report that I did too. We were both talking about that. A Government Operations and Audit came out with a recent report on what Frank was just talking about horse slaughter. And the federal government has shut down the ability to have inspections done in facilities here in the United States. But a recent report just came out that was done by an independent agency that talked about the fact that we are actually treating horses much worse today in this country than we were before. We're shipping them long distances. They're going to Mexico and to Canada. In fact, exports of horses to Mexico has increased 600%. They've gone to Canada, that's increased, it's doubled, I believe, increased 100% above where it was before. And all we've done is hurt our economy and our horse market and the ability to make a profit there. So I did several press releases and press conferences on that issue because, in fact, the reports have shown that we actually have had more reports, record-setting reports of horse abuse and neglect since that change was made. So actually, a lot of the Humane Society and a lot of the other interest groups that have come in and said we needed to do this to protect animals have actually resulted in the fact that this policy change has resulted in more neglect. And so those are the kind of conversations that we need to be having as these reports come out, that we need to make sure that we're bringing to light and that we're talking about, that sometimes people have good intentions, but the opposite effect goes into place. As far as moving legislation on that vote right now, if I had that vote today in the House, it would go down 2-3. So I don't have support there, and but I have been. I sent out letters to everyone on the House side, and I'm holding conversations with them, and especially with the leadership team. So we have some disagreement on the leadership team as well, but all of these conversations need to be had, and when we get to a point where we can get a bill passed, we'll certainly be promoting it. Other questions? Yes. Are you talking about the foreign aid policies and the billions of dollars we send to countries in foreign aid? We do have committees that are working through that, and they're going back and analyzing the dollars that we send to foreign countries and seeing if it still lines up with our national interests and our national security interests. So all I can tell you is on the House side, there is a review process going on that, and we do send billions and billions of dollars to other countries, and a lot of them necessarily we would not consider our allies. And so we need to go back and understand and do the history lesson on how that got started, and if it is still in our country's best interest to continue that, especially in light of the fact that we're borrowing money from China to send to other countries. when we here at home are taking hard cuts to domestic policy. Other questions? One more. Dusty says one more, and I'm not going to disobey. All right. I guess there isn't one more. So, well, thank you so much for having me. It has been an honor for me to be here, and if you ever have any questions or something, I'll be around here for a little bit too. We can sure answer them then. Thank you.